Subject to today's hearing is the fiscal year 2025 request for the Stennis Center for Public Service, the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights, and the Congressional Office for International Leadership. I'd like to thank Ranking Member Espiat, committee members, and our executive directors for being here this morning. The Stennis Center for Public Service was established to promote and strengthen the highest ideals for public service. The congressional programs we fund enable staffers across the chamber and party lines to learn from each other and build relationships that would otherwise not be possible. The Stennis Center fiscal year 2025 budget request is $430,000. Not a number we're used to seeing very often. The same as fiscal year 2024. The Office of Congressional Workplace Rights was established by Congress to administer the Congressional Accountability Act, which is done through outreach, advising services, and training programs tailored to the needs of the legislative branch. OCWR oversees the operation of an administrative dispute resolution program, as well as inspecting over 18 million square feet of facilities and ground to ensure that they are hazard-free and accessible. OCWR provides recommendations to Congress regarding the applicability of the legislative branch of the workplace and accessibility laws, and administers biannual Congressional Workplace Climate Survey of the legislative branch employees. The budget request for OCWR for fiscal year 2025 is $8.591 million, a 5% increase from fiscal year 24. And finally, the Congressional Office for International Leadership was founded by Congress to support international outreach efforts by conducting exchanges that establish lasting progressional relationships between emerging leaders from strategic countries in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and more recently the Indo-Pacific and their U.S. counterparts. The COIL budget request for fiscal year 2025 is $7.2 million, an increase of 20%. I look forward to learning more about your programs today, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Espiat, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Valadeo, and congratulations, and welcome to the Ledge Branch Subcommittee. I look forward to working with you, Ms. Segas, Dr. Pugh, and Mr. Crane. Thank you all for testifying today on behalf of your agencies. Your agencies play a vital role in advancing workplace rights and providing future leaders with the tools required to develop and support democracy. I believe this is the first time that this subcommittee has held a hearing for the Stennis Center, if I'm not mistaken, right? Welcome, Dr. Pugh. Right? And I look forward to hearing about the good things that the center is doing for our congressional staffers and emerging leaders. The center has had the same request for at least 14 years. I am interested in learning how the center manages to produce such a great program consistently with a flat request, Mr. Valadeo, flat, like a flat soda and a cold pizza in a college dorm on a Sunday morning. Yeah, it's good. And so I'm also excited to hear about the needs of the Congressional Office for International Leadership. Your fiscal year 2025 request is $7.2 million, an increase of $1.2 million or over fiscal year 2024 enacted totals. As the first Dominican American to serve in Congress, I am encouraged by the international outreach of your organization to share American politics, accountable governance, and citizen diplomacy. We'd love to see how we can expand that to the Western Hemisphere, Africa, other places in the world as we see other countries, our adversaries, stretching out. We should do the best we can to provide this vital training and benefit to people in other parts of the world. Your request is timely as we must continue to connect with generations to our democratic system, which is the foundation of our nation and a melting pot and diverse nation that we are. Thank you so much, Mr. Crane. Congratulations on your promotion to Executive Director of the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights. I look forward also to your testimony regarding the great work that your organization does and your fiscal year 2025 request for $8.6 million, which is an increase, as Mr. Valadeo said, of 5.4%. above the fiscal year 2024. I am very supportive of the work you do, especially at the time when in Congress we continue to file bills that undermine labor rights, climate, OSHA, and roll back wage protections. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Valdez. I yield back.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Espiat. Dr. Pugh, your full testimony has been submitted for the record, and you are now recognized to provide a summary of your written testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and other members of the committee. And I'll start out by just saying it's a pleasure to be here, and I have our General Counsel, Eric Jones, here as well. And I'll keep this brief, but I'll start by answering the question that the ranking member had too. We've been able to keep our budget flat because we've limited the, that's right, like a flat soda. But we've limited the amount of congressional staff that we've accepted to the program. So I mean, there are consequences with that, but there is a growing demand for our programming, and we just cut off the amount of people that we accept. So that would be something that Congress may decide to continue. I mean, we can continue that, or we can do something about that in the future if that's what you guys would like. So just a brief history of the Stennis Center. We were created in 1988 by Congress to promote public service throughout America and to also get young people interested in careers in public service, as well as providing congressional staffer with training and development. So the 430 supports our congressional programs, and we have other funding sources for other programming, but the 430 is specific to just our congressional programs that support our Stennis Congressional Staff Fellows Program, our Emerging Leaders Program, and also our Congressional Internship Program. So that's how we that's kind of the breakdown of the congressional program. So a little bit about it. We are governed by a board of directors. It's a 7-member board. In the House, the Speaker of the House gets 2 appointments to our board, 6-year terms, and then the minority leader gets 1 appointment, and the majority leader in the House, in the Senate gets 2 appointments, and the minority 1. So it's 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate, and it's meant to be bipartisan. And by law, I am a voting board member. But so they continue to monitor the direction that the program's going into and our budget as well. So again, the 430, I mentioned that it supports those programs, and it's been stagnant for the 118th Congress for our Stennis Fellows Program. We had a large increase in congressional staffers that apply for the program, and one of the negative parts is when we select between 30 and 34 people to the program, we have to tell a lot of people no. And in order to be eligible for the Stennis Fellows Program, you have to have at least 10 years of experience. That's what we usually tell the committee that selects the program, which are senior Stennis Fellows, which are basically congressional staffers that went through the program. So, so that's, again, how we've pretty much been stagnant with the program, is we do have to say no to a lot of people, and that is unfortunate. So with the Stennis Fellows Program, we select between 30 and 34 senior level staffers, and they go through training and development for just over a year and a half. And we bring them we have experts come in to talk about subjects that they're interested in. Some of them may have become chief of staffs at an early age or something, and they may not have had management experience, or they may not have worked with Gen Z long. So that may be some of the topics that they want us to assist with. So that's, again, some of the things that we provide. We take them out of D.C. We've had a long-time relationship with Princeton, where we take them up to, we'll actually be going there next month, I believe, too, though, where we utilize the faculty there in order to, again, provide some type of development for the staffers. And again, it's a really good program. And if you look at in the testimony, some of the people who went through the program and are now referred to as senior Stennis Fellows, it's a pretty amazing group of people. So that's our flagship program, our Stennis Fellows Program, and we have an Emerging Leaders Program, which is basically one-on-one mentoring, where we pair senior Stennis fellows with junior level staffers, and we try to place them based on, again, if you're in the House or you're in the Senate, and interest as well. So that program, it's not quite 30 like the Stennis Fellows program. It's around 25, but it's based on the amount of senior Stennis Fellows that we get to commit to mentoring the junior level staffers. And our Emerging Leaders program is Congressional Hill staffers. A lot of them may be in your offices, but they apply to the program, and we have senior Stennis Fellows come and basically talk to them about Congress as an institution on just a lot of different issues. And it's another very popular program. And that's actually one of the 3 programs that we support with the Congressional Ledge Branch Appropriation that actually has grown. We used to just have 1 cohort in the summer. We now have 3 cohorts. And again, we select around 30 students and 30 interns, and that the demand has just grown significantly for that too, though. And how we were basically able to account for adding the 2 different classes is we used to provide them with refreshments and snacks and stuff. We utilize the CVC, so that's free, and then the staffers, the senior staffers, we don't charge. We don't have to pay. They don't charge us a fee or anything, but we have kind of cut back on refreshments and things like that. And again, we have not grown it. We increased the amount of cohorts, but again, we keep it to around 30. So that's what the 430 pays for. We're very proud of the programs, and just based on the people who went through the program, we continue to get positive feedback as well. So that's a quick rundown, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pugh. I'll now recognize Mr. Crane for a summary of your written testimony.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Valadeo, Ranking Member Espaillat, and distinguished members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you and discuss the fiscal year 2025 budget justification for the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights. Although I just recently became executive director of the OCWR, this is the first time I've had the honor to appear before this committee. I've been working with my colleagues at OCWR since 2017, and I thank you on their behalf for your ongoing and steadfast support. When Congress passed the Congressional Accountability Act nearly 30 years ago with virtually unanimous bipartisan support, it made a promise to the American people that it would apply to itself the same federal workplace and accessibility laws that it applies to employers in the executive branch and in the private sector. Congress established our office, the OCWR, as the independent, nonpartisan office charged with ensuring that that promise is kept. With only 34 FTEs, we are one of the smallest offices with a line item in the budget. However, the scope of the workplace laws that we enforce on the Hill and in offices throughout the country is one of the broadest in the federal government. Like the EEOC in the executive branch and the private sector, we administer the laws in the legislative branch that prohibit discrimination and harassment, as well as laws that require reasonable accommodations for pregnant workers and people with disabilities. Like the Department of Labor, we administer laws that govern minimum wages, overtime, equal pay, job-protected family and medical leave, laws that prohibit discrimination against our nation's veterans and provide them with enhanced opportunities for employment, as well as laws requiring services and facilities that are accessible to people with disabilities. Like the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, we administer laws in the legislative branch that require safe workplaces. And like the Federal Labor Relations Authority, we administer the laws in the legislative branch that govern labor management relations. To accomplish this wide-ranging mission, we develop and provide outreach, education, and training to the congressional community. We provide privileged confidential advising services for covered employees. We operate an administrative dispute resolution program, which includes administrative hearings and voluntary mediation. Our Office of General Counsel enforces laws governing safety, accessibility, and labor relations, and also inspects, as the chair mentioned, more than 18 million square feet of facilities and grounds to ensure that they are and remain safe and accessible. Our Board of Directors advises Congress on keeping CAA protections equivalent to the private sector and the executive branch, and we also administer a biennial Congressional Workplace Climate Survey to more than 30,000 legislative branch employees, which assesses the congressional workplace and the effectiveness of reforms. Our request of just less than $8.6 million focuses on efficiency and considers only strictly mission-critical line items. It doesn't propose any new programs, but it would allow the OCWR to provide the same quality services that it has consistently provided to Congress. In the current fiscal year, we've been able to hire experienced professionals as FTEs to perform in-house services previously provided by contractors and service providers. Although this has resulted in an increase in projected personnel costs, it has also resulted in a significant decrease in costs for contractual services. Approximately 75% of our budget request, or $6.5 million, is for costs associated with 36 authorized FTEs. Because we depend on the ability to recruit and retain these employees, this amount represents a 25% increase above the fiscal year 2024 enacted level, which will maintain compensation levels comparable to those in the executive branch. But as I mentioned, with increased in-house efficiency, our non-personnel costs have significantly decreased in fiscal year 2024, and we expect this trend to continue. Therefore, our request of approximately $2.1 million for non-personnel costs represents a 36% decrease from the fiscal year 2024 enacted amount. Accordingly, all but approximately $450,000 in projected increases in personnel costs are offset by projected decreases in non-personnel costs. Our budget request will allow the OCWR to succeed while serving as a responsible and efficient steward of taxpayer money. I therefore ask that you support it and our continued work to advance workplace rights, safety and health, and accessibility on the Hill and in congressional offices throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. I now recognize Ms. Sargis for a summary of your written testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Valadao and Ranking Member Espaillat. Thank you to all the members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the Congressional Office for International Leadership, or COIL. COIL's mission is to assist Congress in its foreign oversight responsibilities through the administration of the Open World Program, an exchange dedicated to engaging rising parliamentary, rule of law, and civic leaders to build mutual understanding across borders. Our program centers on unfiltered dialogue and brings together professionals and communities with common challenges to discuss their perspectives and best practices. Introducing decision makers from critical regions of the world to members of Congress and American experts leads to important inroads in bilateral relations, in government, and in civic life in these countries. To support this, COIL held nearly 200 congressional meetings in calendar year 2023, both on the Hill and in district offices across the country. Since our founding in 1999, we've responded to congressional interest by expanding to 23 countries throughout Eurasia and the Indo-Pacific, bringing hundreds of delegates annually to meet their counterparts in the United States. In 2023, COIL initiated an experimental model of regional program in the Balkans, bringing together Kosovars, North Macedonians, and Serbians, providing a forum for conversations that COIL is uniquely positioned to facilitate. This model will be expanded to Central Asia later this year. COIL also inaugurated parliamentary program with several Indo-Pacific countries on congressional request due to concerns with the ongoing rise of Chinese malign influence. These parliamentary programs enable regional decision makers to speak directly and frankly about trade, national security, and bilateral relations. Of note, the National Assembly of Vietnam specifically voiced its appreciation for COIL as an important opportunity for further engagement between the legislatures. As COIL seeks to serve every corner of America, the Open World program operates in every state in over 3,000 local host communities. Open World delegations have traveled to each of your districts, and your constituent communities have reported back meaningful results. With high demand, we can only accommodate about a quarter of the hosting demand for our program due to budgetary limitations. This brings us to our request for a budget increase. We have been at or below a $6 million appropriation for the last 11 years, while at the same time being as creative as possible in searching for funding and cost-share opportunities with grantees, host, U.S. embassies, and other stakeholders, further defraying the overall cost per participant. Nevertheless, the per-person cost rose more than 60% between 2020 and 2023 and is insurmountable despite the extensive cost-limiting measures that we implemented. After cautious consideration, we have concluded that a budget increase is essential to optimally fulfill our duties and mission of supporting Congress. With this increase of $1.2 million, we expect to add 1 FTE, a specialist in the Indo-Pacific region, and to expand our Indo-Pacific program, as members have also expressed that with the rise of malign influence from China, having conversations on trade, security, and diplomacy between legislatures takes on additional significance and impact. Having said that, these programs are far more costly than Eurasian programs, with airfare alone being multiple times the cost of other delegations. Therefore, the $1.2 million budget increase would allow a more robust Indo-Pacific program and restore full funding to our national and regional programs in the Balkans, Central Asia, and Central Europe. With a fully funded fiscal 2025 budget, COIL will remain a resource, an asset, and an investment for all members of Congress and their constituents. Each day, COIL's quiet but impactful work brings together Americans and their international peers to take tangible steps forward in their professions and in our country's relationships. Thanks to each of you today for hearing my testimony. I appreciate it, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our witnesses for testifying before this committee today. And as the new committee subcommittee chairman, I look forward to learning about all the different programs in your agencies in greater detail. I will call on members based on seniority of those present when the hearing was called to order, alternating between majority and minority, and then we'll call on members in order of their arrival. Each will have 5 minutes. I now recognize myself. I got to find the first question I wanted to ask. I guess I'll start off. I want to start with COIL. How does COIL and your exchange program support member interests and responsibilities exactly? And can you give me an example of how it affects an individual district?
Well, an individual district could have any number of local hosting organizations, which are the heart of the success of the exchange program. They provide members of their community to give places to stay for the delegations. We do not believe in the hotel approach to international exchange. All of our delegates stay with American families, so they see the United States from the inside of a house, often at a kitchen table. And you learn a lot about your communities and the countries that are visiting you over a cup of tea. So the communities love to share and show off their place, their best practices, their citizenry, their libraries. They share a lot about what makes their community accessible, pleasant, and desirable, but also they're willing to share what's not working, so they bring the conversation around to, let's see if we can come up with some new solutions. Every community benefits from an open world delegation because they are part of the reason the delegation is able to experience the best part of American society.
All right, thank you. Mr. Crane, my understanding is that there's not enough congressional staff that know about your program, so what outreach are you doing into the congressional community?
Our outreach is really a daily function at the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights. We continually engage in it. One of the primary means by which we do so is the biennial Congressional Climate Survey, which permits 30,000 legislative branch employees to answer questions that allows us to provide our oversight committees with information that they can consider in determining whether the reforms that are set forth in the Reform Act have been effective. We have training on all of the laws that are incorporated and applicable to the legislative branch through the Congressional Accountability Act. Our general counsel has a brown bag series on items of interest for legislative branch legal counsel, both who represent employees and employing offices on the Hill. We have outreach programs for the district offices. Our safety professionals regularly provide the district offices with technical assistance. They've administered an online safety and health survey recently. We have quarterly newsletters. We have labor management forums, and so as I said, it's every day is part of our job is outreach to the congressional community that we serve.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pugh, there's a lot of leadership programs out there. Why is it important for us to fund yours and not focus on one in the private sector?
Thank you. I mentioned during the summary of the testimony that we have multiple funding sources. The 430 is specifically for the congressional programs, and one of the things that we found is with some of the other programs that are in the private sector, a lot of the times if they're providing donations, which our enabling legislation allows us to, big difference. But our programming, it's funded by Congress, and we don't want the private sector to make a donation and want additional access to members of Congress. Your staff's basically, and a lot of the times, again, I mentioned that our enabling legislation allows us to solicit funding from private sector, but I mean, I was a former appropriator, and I've been in leadership programs where it was funded by government relations or lobbyists or whatever too, though, and a part of that was they wanted access to us, and that's what we don't want for the congressional staff. So that's why we think it's important for Congress to continue to provide funding for this particular program within Congress.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to recognize our ranking member, Mr. Espaillat, for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Valadeo. Ms. Sargis, as I mentioned during my opening statement, China now it's making a full court press in the Americas, and of course they've been in Africa for some time now. And your particular initiative is concentrated in the Indo-Pacific. What would it take in terms of funding to expand it to our backyard, really, where we need to have an impact and counter that malign influence, not just in the Americas, but also, I would say, in the developing continent of Africa, where it's vital for us to be at the cutting edge there.
Thank you for the question. I would answer that by saying that much like the Indo-Pacific, programs with Africa have a cost challenge because of the distance. Someone coming from Serbia is not the same as someone coming from Papua New Guinea, and I would imagine the same would be true for one of the countries of Africa. So from a budgetary standpoint, it would take an increase that would cover a per person cost. So from that region of the world the per-person cost is higher than it might be.
Well, have you made an analysis of what it would take to expand to, let's say, getting folks from Venezuela or you know, the continent, right in our backyard, right next door, where, you know, there's a strong presence and a real push by China?
Yes, that's true. We actually had a pilot program for Peru some years back because Peru was one of the countries covered under the House Democracy Partnership. And our board has allowed us to participate in programming for any country in the HDP portfolio. So to add countries, our board, which is made up of members of Congress and private citizens, would have to approve the new country.
Okay.
And most of the time, what it takes for the board to approve that addition would be a bipartisan letter or indication of a bipartisan letter of support. And that's how the Indo-Pacific program was launched, with a bipartisan letter that we presented to the board, who voted to agree to do the Indo-Pacific region. We discovered only after we started there what the budget challenges were. I don't call them obstacles, I call them challenges, because there are solutions to funding these kinds of programs, and I imagine we could do it anywhere. And one of the reasons we did this program in Peru, we wanted to see how generic, how adaptable our program was in different regions of the world, and we found that it worked very well. We would be open to Venezuela, we would be open to Cuba, we would be open to a number of places with that bipartisan indication that it would be useful to do that. Mm-hmm. It would take bipartisan on-the-record request that the board would then respond to. And then we give a notification to the subcommittee, 90-day notification, that a new country has been added.
And I recognize that the largest number of participants in the programs, in your program, are from the Ukraine?
Currently, that's
Yes.
our largest cohort.
And this happened after?
After 2022, that's true. We suspended the Russia program in 2022 for obvious reasons. We don't have a path forward to restarting it for obvious reasons, but in the words of the late, great Dr. James Billington, who founded the agency in 1999, keeping a door open, keeping a way forward, having an opportunity for dialogue is very important. We have 20,000 alumni in Russia. We don't have contact with them necessarily, but sometimes somebody reaches out to us. We're not interested in endangering anyone, but we also don't want to endanger our own program. Our agency is still allowed to operate there should we choose to do so. We have not been declared a foreign agent. Because we're associated with Congress and not a presidential administration, we have a certain access.
And this was my last question. How do you protect yourself from being infiltrated by a foreign agent? Are there any mechanisms that?
Not a formal mechanism. A lot of it has, we're such a tiny agency, there's 7 of us, so we talk about these sorts of things constantly. We inform each other of funny things happening. We try to keep informed. We also ask questions when we can. The first time I ever testified, I appeared on Russian media everywhere. And that was not a comfortable feeling, I will tell you, honestly.
This meeting may be.
It may be, very well. You know, they pronounced my name right. I was quite happy about that. But yes, it's dicey. But the people I met from Russia are just like Americans. They may or may not love their government, but they love their country. And I respect that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. LaTurner, 5 minutes.
Thank you, and congratulations, Mr. Chairman. So happy to have you. My first question is for Director Crane. Are there any other, other than the annual mandatory training for staff and members, do you offer any other services or training throughout the year?
Well, we offer a full range of training, which is all listed on our website, and we can give it at any time throughout the year.
Is it upon request, or?
It is upon request. These are, most of them are voluntary training and education programs. They can be given in person, they can be given virtually, which enhances our ability to comply with the congressional mandate that we provide equity of access to employees in district offices throughout the country.
How often are those utilized, the upon request training?
On a fairly regular basis. It would really depend on the particular training. The most popular is obviously the training that concerns all the rights and protections under the CAA, followed by voluntary training modules on subjects such as labor relations, developments in discrimination law, and various other topics.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Director Sargis, so you mentioned 20,000 in Russia alone have gone through this. What would be examples of the fruits of that interaction that we've had? Not just there, but everywhere.
One example is the partner sister city relationships that started. Now, sister cities are all at risk now because there are no relationships with Russia. But during the course of our program in Russia, there were lots of sister city relations that were created. And I can tell you that Rotary International is probably hands down singularly responsibility for the success of this program in Russia with Russian citizens. There became many Rotary clubs in Russia that didn't exist before our program. And that would be one. The other one is a very simple example of a delegate who came to the United States from Russia in 2005, went to Texas, stayed with the host family. They had horses. He rode horses on the farm. They had a barbecue as part of a community event. He had Texas barbecue. He had a wonderful time. And his name appeared in a report in 2005 from the facilitator who joined the group as someone to keep an eye on. And his name was Alexei Navalny. And it was very important to us to watch how he did and what he did over the years. We considered it a loss almost at a personal level at his death, but we're also very proud of the fact that his vision of the world, part of it, was born in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Pugh, I'm curious, two questions for you. How close, I think you said it's been around since the late 80s, is that right? 88, yeah. How close does the current program look like compared to the one in 88, the original intent?
So it's quite different. The Stennis, let's just use the Stennis Fellows Program, our flagship program. It was started with the 103rd Congress, so that wasn't actually started in 88. But it's changed drastically. When the 103rd class, the 103rd Congress, we didn't get nearly as many senior level officials or our staffers applying for the program, and now it's a lot more senior. I think the average government experience for the 118th Congress that's part of the program is like 15.8 years, so it's a lot more senior level staff, and really just depending on what the congressional class wants, that really decides what the curriculum is. So it evolves. Right now, again,
You talked multiple times about different funding sources. How many different funding sources? How big of a portfolio are you managing?
Okay, so it's just under $2 million. So we have civil military programs. It's transfer.
Just under $2 million?
Just under $2 million, correct. So we have a civil military program, and we get a transfer from the DOD for that portion, and we also work with our congressional fellows. Actually, touch all of our programs, and we also have an endowment. When we were created in 88, it was about $7.5 million, but the interest over that period of time too, it's just under $18 million in an endowment. So the principal off the endowment actually supports our student programs. So that's kind of what we use for that.
Understood. Thank you all for being here today. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Franklin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations. That has a very nice ring to it. Let's see. Mr. Crane, a couple of questions regarding your budget, and I'm just still trying to understand how these are put together. The $500,000 carryover that you're requesting to go beyond the end of the fiscal year into the next, is that something that is a recurring component of your budget? Do you currently have a $500,000 that's going to go into the FY '25 or '24?
The 500,000 that we're requesting as multi-year money, we use that money to pay for non-personnel costs, such as contractors and service providers. In the past, we've asked for more money to obligate up through the following fiscal year, but we've reduced that quite a bit simply because we anticipate and we project for fiscal year 2025 that we're going to have lower non-personnel costs. So since we only use that to cover non-personnel costs and we expect those to be lower, we've reduced the amount. But what we do use that for is what we consider the known unknowns. Every one of our hearings, our hearing officers are contractors, our mediators are contractors. So we simply don't know how many cases we're going to get in a given year. But if there's an unanticipated increase, then we would rely on that $500,000 in 2-year money to cover those
That
costs.
sounds like you're anticipating lower expenses, but you don't want to give up that money, so you're asking to keep it in the budget and carry it forward. I don't really understand why things are different, and if you're projecting less, why don't you request less?
Request less in 2-year money or request less altogether?
I've understood you said you're expecting your needs to be lower in the year.
We're expecting our non-personnel costs to be lower, but we're expecting our personnel costs to be higher. So all but $500,000 of our request that's all personnel costs increasing. The $500,000 more or less represents that portion of increased personnel costs that aren't offset by non-personnel costs, anticipated non-personnel costs.
Okay, that's still clear as mud to me, but in the last Congress, it was approved to allow offices to unionize. Just wondering how that program has progressed, how many are unionized now, how many are in the process, and how has that impacted your workload, your team?
As far as numbers, in fiscal year 2023, we had 8 representation election petitions filed, and we conducted 11 representation elections and issued certifications in those cases. We haven't had a petition filed in fiscal year 2024. We did receive a disclaimer petition in 2024, but recently we haven't had a lot of activity on the unionization front. We've retained an FTE to process those union petitions when they come in. That person does a number of other tasks for us, so I would estimate that about under 20% of his time is spent on processing union petitions. And our non-personnel costs concerning processing union petitions are de minimis. We use a contractor that allows us to conduct virtual secret ballot elections for employees both on the Hill and in the district offices, but the contracting costs, that's a contractor that's also used by the Federal Labor Relations Authority and the executive branch, but our contracting costs are de minimis.
Very good. Dr. Pugh, quick question. I noticed a lot of your budget is funded from the trust fund originally that was established, and you feed a lot off of the interest on that. What is the corpus of that trust fund? How much are we talking about?
Initially, it was 7.5 million, and again, it's grown. But in our enabling legislation, it's really restrictive, so we can only invest in treasury bonds, so it hasn't grown nearly as much. But we don't touch the 7.5 million, and interest right now is with low interest rates, I mean, if I had to.
But going up, I'd say
Well, yeah.
you're probably the only person around who likes high interest rates.
Exactly.
Hopefully, you'll be coming back to us needing more because the interest rates are lower, but.
Yeah. So if I had to, I'm trying to think of the number last year. It was under $200,000. I mean, even with the large amount, like I mentioned, it was, let's just say approximately 18 million too, though. It doesn't generate $250,000 in interest. So, and that's with the conservative treasury bonds that we are restricted to. So, and again, whenever in '88, when it was created, interest rates were just under 10%, so it would generate $600,000. That's not the case now.
Understand. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, you're back.
Thank you. Ms. Bice, 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, congratulations and welcome to the Ledge Branch Appropriations Subcommittee.
Welcome back. I was here a few years ago.
Well, not since I'm here, so I'm happy to have you. I want to start by speaking to Ms. Sargis. Last Congress, the GAO identified that COIL actually doesn't have oversight from an inspector general. Is that accurate, that you do not have an IG that oversees COIL to conduct regular audits and performance evaluations, et cetera?
It's half true.
Thank you.
We occupy space in the Library of Congress by agreement, and as such, we also ride the contract for the annual audit with the Library of Congress. So their IG manages that contract, which means by extension, they provide support to us for the annual audit. But it's limited. The IG support is limited only to the annual audit.
So are you suggesting that it would be incumbent upon the LOC to request either independent inspector general or for them to conduct a full audit of COIL moving forward?
Well, we get a full audit.
A performance audit or just a
a
budget?
financial statements audit.
Okay,
We get a
I want
full.
to. I'm looking for a full audit.
I see. My understanding is that GAO would be able to determine whether that is under their purview, whether I don't believe I have the ability to ask the library's IG to do such a thing, and I don't believe the library's IG would do it just because I requested it. I believe GAO would have to provide some guidance, some sense of whose purview this falls under to determine how it would be done.
Well, so last year, your office was in discussions with the Library of Congress IG and the House Administration Committee to explore having that IG serve as a independent IG to your office. But those discussions abruptly ended, and I believe it was claimed that COIL was not accountable to the House Administration Committee, which oversees LOC.
And I don't know who claimed that,
Okay.
but COIL has a very strong relationship with this House Administration Committee, as we have for many years, both from a programmatic sense, but also from an agency sense. We work very closely with the library, and we appreciate very much the services we get from the library, but we can't demand from the IG service or coverage that is not within their purview to give to us.
So let me make sure that we're tracking on the same path here. If I, as a appropriator and a member of House Administration, want to ensure that COIL has a full audit, not just a budgetary audit, are you agreeing that that should happen and that we should try to find a way to execute on that?
I think we would be amenable to a full audit if that is what was deemed important, necessary, and customary. We'd be happy to do it.
I think almost every agency has a full audit on a semi-regular basis. It could be every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, who knows?
Okay.
And it seems that hasn't happened with COIL. So I think for me, as an appropriator on Ledge Branch, but also as a member of the House Administration Committee, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we have visibility and insight and transparency. So I appreciate your willingness to allow us to try to figure out a way that we can incorporate a full IG into your organization to ensure that that you're meeting all the needs. The other question I have for you is looking at the fiscal year appropriation requested. You had in fiscal year 2020, the appropriation was 5.9 million, and you had 9.3 full-time employees. You're asking for an increase from that 2020 appropriation to 7.2, but a decrease to 8 employees. Can you explain that?
Yes, the program cost has grown exponentially. The per-person cost for our program from 2020 to 2023 has increased by 60%. A lot of that is airfare, but also the home hosting costs have increased. So a delegation is 6 people. To rent a van and a driver and have those kind of resources available takes more money in the local grant. So the cost of our program is increased in grants and in the contract that we have with an NGO to be our implementer, to be our logistical implementer. And so those costs have gone up exponentially.
How many cohorts do you host annually?
About 550, between 500 and 600 a year.
And you're doing them in groups of 6? Did I hear that right?
Yes, so a
So
delegation.
100 of them, you're doing 100 individual programs annually?
Yes,
Okay. All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bice. If there are no further questions, I'd like to thank Dr. Pugh, Mr. Crane, and Ms. Sargis for being here today. Members may submit any additional questions for the record, and the committee stands adjourned.
That would be absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to make sure, I think there was some confusion about who allows for the IG and who has the authority over that, and so.
It's not us.
Okay.
COIL can't tell, I cannot tell the library IG.
No, but I think that you could request that be the case to Dr. Hayden.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's where I'm going with that.
I see.